Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. Laser blasts sizzled past Carl Knight's head as he sprinted through the grimy maintenance corridors of Tardion V's lower docks. The fake precursor artifact clutched against his chest burned cold through his jacket, probably worth less than the scrap metal it was made from, but try telling that to the angry creditors behind him. "You can't run forever, Knight." The gravelly voice of Borch, the collector, echoed off the metal walls. "I've got people at every exit." Carl skidded around a corner, his boots leaving black marks on the deck plating. "That's what you think, old man." He slapped the control panel of a maintenance hatch, diving through just as it hissed shut behind him. The satisfying thunk of bolt locks engaging brought a grin to his face. The smile didn't last long. Warning lights flashed across his wrist computer, reminding him that his ship, the Lucky Break, was running on fumes and prayer. The life support system flickered between yellow and red status. Not good. "Computer, how long till total system failure?" "Approximately 18 minutes at current usage rates," the AI replied in its perpetually bored tone. "Though the port engine might explode before that. Would you like me to calculate those odds as well?" "Just get us ready for emergency launch." Carl slammed into the pilot's seat, his fingers dancing across the controls. The engine coughed to life with a concerning rattle. Through the viewport, he could see Borch's thugs emerging onto the landing pad, their weapons drawn. Time to go. He yanked back on the controls, and the Lucky Break lurched upward, pieces of hull plating rattling loose. "Warning!" the computer droned. "Multiple system failures imminent. Recommend immediate—" "Shut up and give me everything we've got." Carl punched in random coordinates. "Emergency jump now." The stars stretched into lines as the jump drive engaged. The ship shuddered violently, and Carl's stomach lurched as reality twisted around them. A moment later, they burst back into normal space, directly in front of the most impressive space station Carl had ever seen. It hung in space like a massive crystal flower, its purple-tinted spires reaching out in elegant curves. Hundreds of ships moved in precise patterns around it, most of them bearing the distinctive designs of the Terranium Empire. Oh, hell! Carl's blood ran cold. He jumped right into the heart of the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. "Computer, get us out of here." "Jump drive offline," the AI replied cheerfully. "Also, we're being hailed." A stern feminine voice filled the cockpit. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted diplomatic space. Prepare for scanning and identification." Carl's hand instinctively went to the military badge his old friend had given him in that bar, his lucky charm that was supposed to help him avoid situations exactly like this. As the scan swept over his ship, he could only pray it wouldn't get him executed on the spot. The voice returned, but now it was filled with warmth and respect. "Commander Grant Knight, our deepest apologies. We weren't expecting the Thunder Eagle's arrival for another cycle. Welcome to Tyranium Prime Diplomatic Station. Please proceed to Docking Bay Alpha 1 for your honor reception." Carl blinked. What?" "Please repeat your last transmission, Commander," the voice prompted. "We're experiencing some interference." Carl stared at the military badge, its surface catching the purple light from the station. The worn metal showed an eagle wrapped in lightning, identical to the symbols on the sleek military vessels patrolling nearby. His mind raced. Death by angry creditors or taking a chance on whatever this was? "Apologies," he said, deepening his voice slightly. "My ship sustained some classified damage during my last mission. Docking Bay Alpha 1 confirmed." The Lucky Break limped toward the indicated bay, trailing a thin line of coolant. As they approached, Carl got his first close look at Tyranium architecture, Everything seemed to be built from some kind of crystalline material that shifted colors in the starlight. Computer, quick search on Thunder Eagle and Commander Grant Knight. Searching. Commander Grant Knight, legendary Terranium fleet strategist, hero of the Battle of Seven Suns, master diplomat, and, yes, I get it, I'm impersonating someone way out of my league. Carl straightened his jacket, trying to brush off the worst of the scorch marks. Any tips on Tyranium military protocol? Downloading basic etiquette guide. Warning. Attempting to impersonate a Tyranium military officer is punishable by just tell me how to stand and salute. The docking procedure was surprisingly smooth given his ship's condition. As the airlock cycled, Carl took several deep breaths, squaring his shoulders the way the computer had shown him. The door hissed open. He nearly stumbled. The welcoming committee was impressive, a full honor guard in crystalline armor, and at their head, Carl's breath caught, the most striking woman he'd ever seen. She stood tall and proud, her purple skin seeming to glow from within. Her formal military uniform hugged curves that would make a galaxy spiral, but it was her eyes that caught him, deep violet with flecks of silver, studying him with an intensity that made him want to confess everything right there. Commander Knight, she said, her voice musical but authoritative. I am Lieutenant Aris Terranium. Welcome to our humble station. Carl managed what he hoped was a proper salute. The honor is mine, Lieutenant. He wasn't even lying about that part. A slight frown crossed her perfect features. Your ship appears different from our records. Classified modifications, Carl said quickly, for a special undercover operation. Of course. Was that amusement in her eyes? Though I must say, your approach to stealth is unique. We tracked your entry from 3 sectors away. Carl felt sweat bead on his forehead. Sometimes the best way to hide is to be obvious about it. To his surprise, she laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes. How refreshingly unconventional. The stories of your unusual tactics clearly weren't exaggerated. She gestured to the honor guard. Please, your quarters have been prepared, though perhaps you'd like to freshen up first? That obvious, huh? Let's just say that battle damage has a distinctive aroma. She fell into step beside him as they walked through the station's sweeping corridors. I must admit, you're not quite what I expected, Commander. Oh. Carl tried to match her precise stride while taking in his surroundings. Everything was purple-tinted crystal and flowing curves, with occasional splashes of gold and silver. Station personnel, all with various shades of purple skin, stopped to salute as they passed. The reports describe you as more rigid, traditional. Her sideways glance held that same hint of amusement. Yet, you seem almost relaxed. War changes a man, Carl said sagely, having absolutely no idea what he was talking about. Makes you appreciate a more flexible approach to command. They reached what had to be the VIP section of the station. The door to his quarters swept open to reveal a suite that made his usual hideouts look like cargo holds. Crystal sculptures caught the light, and the viewport offered a stunning view of the nearby nebula. The diplomatic reception begins in 3 hours, Aris said. I'll have someone bring you a proper uniform. She paused, those incredible eyes studying him again. I look forward to hearing more about your flexible approaches, Commander. After she left, Carl collapsed onto a couch that probably cost more than everything he'd ever owned. Computer, what exactly have I gotten myself into? Based on current factors, either a remarkably fortuitous con or your imminent execution, would you like me to calculate the odds? Just help me figure out how to act like a legendary commander for one night. He stared at his reflection in the crystalline wall. How hard can it be? The diplomatic uniform they brought him was a masterpiece of military tailoring, deep purple with gold trim that seemed to catch impossible light, complete with an array of medals Carl couldn't begin to identify. He was adjusting the collar when a soft chime announced a visitor. A young Tyranium officer entered, looking nervous. "Commander, I've been sent to brief you on tonight's protocols." He hesitated. "And there's something you should know about Emperor Valex." Carl's stomach dropped. "The Emperor?" "Yes, sir. He's been asking about you all day. You see, he and the Thunder Eagle, you and His Majesty were close friends years ago." "Were? The Emperor hasn't seen you, Commander Naiti, in 7 years. He's been quite excited about the reunion." The officer shifted uncomfortably. "He speaks often of your shared battles and strategy sessions. I should also warn you that His Majesty's vision has unfortunately deteriorated. He sees quite poorly now." Carl sank into a chair, his mind racing. 7 years, you say?" "Yes, sir. The Emperor mentions the Battle of 7 Suns frequently. He says it was the last time you dined together." The young officer straightened. "He's been telling everyone how much he looks forward to reminiscing about old times." "Wonderful," Carl muttered. "Just what he needed, an emperor expecting to relive war stories with his old friend. Is there anything else I should know?" "The reception will begin with formal introductions, followed by dinner and strategic discussions regarding the pirate clans in the Outer Rim. The Emperor has specifically requested your input on the matter." "Of course he has." Carl stood, squaring his shoulders. "Well, better not keep him waiting." The grand reception hall put the rest of the station to shame. Crystalline chandeliers floated without visible support, casting rainbow refractions across the gathered dignitaries. Carl recognized representatives from at least a dozen major civilizations, all mixing with the purple-skinned Tyranium elite. Commander Naiti. Aris appeared at his elbow, wearing a formal dress uniform that somehow managed to be both perfectly proper and devastatingly attractive. "Allow me to escort you to His Majesty." Emperor Valak stood at the head of the hall, an imposing figure despite his advanced age. His purple skin had a silvery sheen, and his eyes held the wisdom of centuries. When he turned toward Carl, his face lit up with genuine warmth. "Grant, my old friend." The Emperor's voice boomed across the hall. 7 years is far too long." Carl stepped forward, his heart pounding. He bowed deeply, buying precious seconds to think. "Your Majesty, the years have been kind to you." "Always so formal." Valak laughed, pulling Carl into an unexpected embrace. "Do you remember what you said to me after the Battle of 7 Suns? Valak, you old star dragon, your strategy was either brilliant or insane, and I'm still not sure which." Carl forced a laugh. "How could I forget? Though your moves that day proved it was definitely brilliance." The Emperor's eyes twinkled. "And do you remember what happened after, in the officers' mess, when you tried to demonstrate the maneuver using soup bowls?" "Ah." Carl glanced at Aris, who was watching the exchange with intense interest. "Some memories of that evening are hazier than others." Valak roared with laughter. "The drink was flowing freely that night, but your tactical genius showed through even then. Speaking of which..." He gestured to a nearby table laden with strategic displays. "I'm eager to hear your thoughts on our current situation with the pirates." As they moved toward the displays, Carl caught Aris studying him with those mesmerizing eyes. There was something in her expression, curiosity, suspicion. Before he could analyze it further, she stepped closer. "Commander," she said softly, "perhaps you'd care to dance first. The strategic discussions can wait a moment." "I..." Carl glanced at the Emperor, who nodded encouragingly. "Go, go. We have all evening to talk tactics. Enjoy yourself, old friend." The music was unlike anything Carl had heard before, crystalline tones that seemed to flow through the air like liquid light. Aris moved with natural grace, and he did his best to follow her lead without being too obvious about it. "You handle yourself well for a military man," she murmured. "Full of surprises, aren't I?" "Indeed." She drew slightly closer. "Tell me, Commander, what really brought you to our station today?" Carl's pulse quickened. "Would you believe a random navigational error? In a ship that looks like it's been through an asteroid demolition derby?" Her lips curved in a subtle smile. "How fascinating." The music shifted, and she guided them toward a quieter corner of the hall. "I have something for you, Commander." She produced an ornate crystalline box, its surface etched with intricate patterns. "A small token of appreciation for your unexpected arrival." Carl accepted the box carefully. "You're too kind, Lieutenant." "Oh, I insist." Was that a mischievous glint in her eye? "Be sure to open it later, in private. It's something of a traditional gesture." Before Carl could respond, the Emperor's voice boomed across the hall. "Come, Grant. You must tell everyone about that brilliant flanking maneuver you used at Centauri Prime." "Duty calls," Aris said with a slight bow. "Don't forget about the box, Commander. I look forward to discussing its contents very soon." Hours later, Carl collapsed onto the couch in his quarters, loosening the uniform's collar. He'd somehow survived an evening of vague tactical discussions, carefully deflected war stories, and what he was pretty sure were several thinly veiled threats from various diplomats. The crystalline box sat on the table, catching the light from the nebula outside. "Well," he said to the empty room, "might as well see what kind of trouble this is." He opened the box carefully. Inside was a single document written in flowing Tyranium script. As his eyes scanned the text, translated automatically by his neural implant, the blood drained from his face. "Computer," he croaked, "please tell me this isn't what I think it is." Analyzing. "It appears to be a traditional Tyranium marriage contract, signed and sealed by both parties." "Congratulations, sir. According to Imperial law, you are now betrothed to Lieutenant Aris Tyranium, granddaughter of Emperor Valix and third in line to the Imperial throne." Carl stared at the document, then at his reflection in the crystal walls, then back at the document. "Well," he said finally, "I guess this beats getting shot by creditors." The computer's voice was almost cheerful. "Would you like me to calculate the odds of surviving either scenario? Just wake me up if anyone comes to arrest me." Carl fell back onto the couch, still clutching the contract. Through the viewport, the nebula's purple light seemed to be laughing at him. Carl woke to an urgent chiming from his room's communication system. His head throbbed from last night's diplomatic reception and the revelation of his accidental engagement. "Commander Nai-T," a crisp voice announced, "your presence is required in the Strategic Command Center immediately. The pirate situation requires your unique perspective." He groaned, fumbling with the formal uniform. "Computer, quick brief on Tyranium military protocols." Analyzing. "Warning. Your current knowledge gap regarding basic ship operations may prove problematic. Just tell me which buttons not to push." The Strategic Command Center was a marvel of crystalline technology. Three-dimensional star maps floated in the air, with hostile pirate vessels marked in angry red. Senior officers stood around a central holographic display, their expressions grim. Aris was there, looking impossibly fresh and composed. When their eyes met, she gave him a slight smile that sent his pulse racing. "Commander, perhaps you'd care to analyze our current tactical situation." Carl approached the display, trying to look commanding while frantically searching for anything familiar. The holographic ships reminded him of something. "Wait. This formation," he said slowly, "reminds me of an ancient Earth strategy game called space invaders. The words were out before he could stop them. Instead of laughter, he was met with intense interest. "Please, elaborate, Commander," one of the senior officers urged. "Well, in for a credit, in for a crown. The pirates are using a predictable descent pattern. If we position our fighters here and here," he moved holographic ships into position, "we create a barrier while our heavy cruisers can pick them off one by one." The officers studied the pattern. "Brilliant," someone exclaimed. "The simplicity is its genius." "Who would expect us to use such an archaic formation?" another added. "The psychological impact alone." Carl caught Eris watching him, her violet eyes sparkling with something between amusement and admiration. "How fascinating," she murmured. "You continue to surprise, Commander." Before he could respond, the Emperor himself entered the command center. Despite his failing eyesight, Valix moved with imperial dignity. "Grant, my friend, I heard you were revolutionizing our tactical approach again." "Just drawing on historical precedents, Your Majesty." "Excellent. Join me for breakfast. We have much to discuss about the upcoming negotiations with the pirate clans." Valex's clouded eyes crinkled with warmth. "And of course, we must discuss your engagement to my granddaughter." Over breakfast in the Emperor's private dining room, Carl tried to keep his stories vague while dodging questions about battles he'd never fought. Valex's failing vision was a blessing. He couldn't see Carl's nervous fidgeting. "You know," Valix said suddenly, "when I arranged this match, Eris was hesitant." Carl nearly choked on his exotic fruit. "Oh?" She'd heard so many stories about the legendary Thunder Eagle, expected some gruff, ancient warrior. The Emperor chuckled. "But look at you, still so young. The mysteries of advanced medical technology, eh?" "Medical technology. Right." Carl took a long drink from his crystal goblet. "Amazing stuff." "Indeed, and I must say, you seem different, more relaxed than I remember." Valix leaned forward, his clouded eyes searching approximately where Carl's face was. 7 years can change a person, but your whole energy is transformed." Carl's collar felt suddenly tight. "War does that to a person. Makes you reconsider your approach to life." "Ah, yes, philosophical as always." Valix beamed. "But tell me, what do you think of Eris? She's grown into quite the officer since you last saw her." "She's—" Carl struggled to find words that wouldn't betray too much emotion. "Remarkable. That she is. You know, she used to beg me to tell her stories about your battles when she was young, especially the Battle of 7 Suns." The Emperor's face grew wistful. "Though I must admit, my memory of the details grows hazier with each passing year." Carl was saved from responding by an urgent message on his comm unit. "Commander Nai T, your presence is required for the pirate clan negotiations." The negotiation chamber was designed to intimidate, all sweeping crystal arches and sharp angles. The pirate delegation looked appropriately nervous, their usual swagger diminished by the grandeur. The famous Thunder Eagle himself, their leader, a scarred woman named Captain Fever, sneered. "Here to share more of your legendary wisdom?" Carl settled into his chair, channeling every smooth-talking con he'd ever run. "Actually, I thought we might play a game." The pirates exchanged confused looks. Eris, seated beside him, raised an elegant eyebrow. "A game?" Captain Fever asked. "Sure." Carl pulled out a deck of cards he'd had in his jacket, one of his favorite tools for running cons. "Simple stakes. You win. We reduce the proposed tariffs by 15%. I win. You accept our original terms and throw in established trade routes through the Crimson Nebula." "This is highly irregular," one of the Tyranium diplomats protested. "Commander Nai T's unconventional methods are well documented," Eris interrupted smoothly. Her knee brushed against Carl's under the table. "Please, continue." The game was one Carl had invented years ago specifically for cheating wealthy marks. Within an hour, he had the pirates eating out of his hand and signing the most favorable trade agreement the Empire had seen in decades. Unorthodox but effective, Aris commented as they left the chamber. You never cease to amaze, Commander. Just using my natural talents. Indeed. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Would you care to demonstrate more of these talents at tonight's Imperial Ball? The ball was everything Carl had expected from an advanced civilization, floating crystal platforms carrying musicians, anti-gravity dance floors, and enough precious metals to buy a small planet. He tugged at his dress uniform's collar, still uncomfortable with the weight of all those metals. Aris found him by the exotic drink dispensers, looking stunning in a formal gown that somehow managed to be both military precise and breathtakingly elegant. Hiding from your admirers, Commander? Just admiring the view. He gestured vaguely at the spectacular space vista visible through the crystal walls, though his eyes never left her face. You know, she said, stepping closer, when Grandfather first told me about this arrangement, I was less than enthusiastic. Oh? Carl tried to keep his voice steady. She accepted a drink from a floating server droid. I'd grown up hearing stories about the Great Thunder Eagle. I imagined some ancient, battle-scarred warrior with a personality as rigid as a neutron star. Carl watched her take a sip, fascinated by how the liquid seemed to shimmer against her purple skin. Disappointed? Quite the opposite. Her eyes met his, sending a jolt through his system. You're nothing like I expected. You're... She paused, a slight darker purple flush coloring her cheeks. You're young, handsome, and completely unpredictable. I aimed to surprise, he managed. Would you like to see something truly surprising? Without waiting for an answer, she took his hand. Follow me. She led him through a series of crystalline corridors, finally entering what had to be the Imperial Conservatory. Bioluminescent flowers floated in anti-gravity fields, their petals shifting through impossible colors. The air was thick with exotic perfumes. My private sanctuary, Aris said softly, away from all the protocols and expectations. Carl realized they were still holding hands. It's beautiful. You know what else is beautiful? She turned to face him, those incredible eyes seeming to glow in the shifting light. The way you completely upend everything we thought we knew about the Thunder Eagle, it's like you're a completely different person. Carl's heart hammered. Aris, She pressed a finger to his lips. Shh. For once, no tactics, no strategies, no games. She stepped closer, and Carl caught the subtle scent of something like stardust and honey. The kiss took him completely by surprise. Her lips were soft, tasting faintly of the shimmering drink from earlier. Around them, the bioluminescent flowers seemed to pulse brighter, casting them in a rainbow of shifting colors. When they finally broke apart, Aris was definitely blushing, her purple skin almost luminescent. That was definitely against protocol, Carl finished, slightly breathless. She laughed, the sound like crystal wind chimes. You know what? I don't care. I think I'm falling for you, my unpredictable commander. The moment was shattered by an urgent beeping from both their communication devices. Commander, Lieutenant, a tense voice announced. We have an emergency situation in the command center. They arrived to find the strategic display showing a massive pirate fleet emerging from hyperspace, far larger than anything in their intelligence reports. Impossible, one of the senior officers muttered. They've united all the major clans. Carl studied the formation, his mind racing. It looked exactly like the final level of that old video game he used to play in dive bars between cons. Computer, can you show me their projected attack vector? The holographic display shifted, showing hundreds of ships moving in an intricate pattern. Carl felt Eris tense beside him. "They're using your own strategy against us," she said softly. "Someone must have leaked the plans from this morning's briefing." Carl allowed himself a small smile. "Not quite. They're using what they think is our strategy." He stepped forward, manipulating the holographic controls with growing confidence. "In the game, in the ancient Earth tactical simulations, this is exactly when you deploy the secret weapon." "Secret weapon?" The Emperor's voice boomed as he entered the command center, supported by an aide. "Grant, what are you planning?" "Something crazy," Carl admitted. "But sometimes crazy is exactly what you need." He quickly outlined his plan based entirely on his memories of gaming marathons in seedy spaceports. The senior officers looked skeptical, but Eris spoke up. "The Thunder Eagle's unconventional tactics have never failed us before. I say we trust him." Valix nodded, his clouded eyes bright with excitement. "Just like old times, eh, Grant? Give the order." What followed was either brilliant strategy or complete chaos. Carl wasn't entirely sure which. He had the Tyranium fleet execute a series of maneuvers that probably violated several laws of physics, using the crystal ship's natural reflective properties to create a dazzling light show that confused the pirates' targeting systems. "Now," he commanded, "execute the bonus round formation." The resulting battle would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy, though no one could quite agree on what actually happened. When the dust settled, the pirate fleet was in full retreat and the Tyranium ships had suffered minimal damage. "Extraordinary!" Valix exclaimed, clapping Carl on the back. "I haven't seen anything like that since our last battle together." Carl caught Aris watching him from across the command center. She looked impressed, amused, and something else he couldn't quite read. Later, in a quiet corridor, she cornered him. "You know," she said, her voice low and intense, "I've studied every historical record of the Thunder Eagle's tactics, every battle, every strategy." Carl's mouth went dry. "Oh, She stepped closer. "And do you know what I've concluded? I'm afraid to ask. That I don't care." Her eyes locked with his. "I don't care if you learned strategy from video games or ancient texts or fever dreams. I don't care if your methods make sense to anyone else, because whatever you're doing, however you're doing it, it works. And more than that," she traced a finger along one of his borrowed medals, "you make it look absolutely magnificent. Aris, I should tell you." She silenced him with another kiss, this one even more heated than the first. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were sparkling. "Save your confessions for another day, Commander. For now, just know that you've managed to do something the real Thunder Eagle never could." "What's that?" "Make me fall completely, hopelessly in love with you." As Carl watched her walk away, her perfect posture somehow both military precise and alluring, he felt an unfamiliar sensation in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Guilt. "Computer," he whispered, "I think I'm in trouble." "Actually," the AI replied cheerfully, "by my calculations, you're in several kinds of trouble simultaneously. Would you like me to list them in order of potential fatality?" Carl leaned against the crystal wall, watching Eris disappear around a corner. "No need. For once, I think I know exactly how much trouble I'm in." He touched his lips, still tingling from the kiss. "And the worst part is, I think I'm starting to believe my own con." The day everything fell apart started with another diplomatic crisis. Carl was in the middle of explaining his latest ancient Earth tactical maneuver to the Imperial Council when the chamber doors burst open. "Where is that imposter using my name?" The voice was like gravel being crushed by a star cruiser. Carl turned to see a mountain of a man stumbling into the chamber, his decorated uniform wrinkled and reeking of expensive spirits. This was the real Thunder Eagle, Commander Grant Knight himself. "You!" The old warrior pointed a shaking finger at Carl. "That's my medal, and my—" He squinted at the assembly, swaying slightly. "Why are there 3 emperors?" The chamber erupted in chaos. Security forces materialized from hidden alcoves, weapons drawn. Carl felt Aris tense beside him, but when he glanced her way, she looked more amused than alarmed. "Silence!" Emperor Valex's voice cut through the chaos. Despite his failing eyesight, he stood with perfect imperial bearing. "Grant, old friend, you're late as usual, and drunk also as usual." "Valex?" The real Thunder Eagle peered around blearily. "Why didn't you tell me some con artist was running around pretending to be me?" "Because, my old friend," Valex said with a slight smile, "he's been doing a far better job of it than you have lately." Carl's mind raced. "Your Majesty, I can explain—" "Oh, can you?" The Emperor turned his clouded eyes toward Carl's voice. "Can you explain how a common smuggler managed to revolutionize our military tactics, secure the most favorable trade agreement in decades, and make my granddaughter smile more in a week than she has in years?" Carl blinked. "You knew?" Valex laughed. "My boy, I may be blind, but I'd know Grant's particular bouquet of alcohol and bad decisions from a parsec away. The moment you walked in without that distinctive aroma, I knew you weren't him." "Grandfather!" Aris stepped forward, her perfect posture somehow conveying both military precision and defiance. "I can explain my part in this. Can you explain why you didn't tell me you knew he was an imposter from the start?" Valex's tone was gentle. Aris's purple skin darkened with a blush. How did you—" "My dear, I raised you. Did you think I wouldn't notice when you started playing along with this charade?" He chuckled. "The real Grant couldn't tell a diplomatic protocol from a dinner menu. The moment this young man started improvising his way through negotiations, you must have known." "Well," Aris said, drawing herself up with dignity despite her blush, "someone had to see if he could actually pull it off. And he did rather spectacularly, didn't he?" The real Thunder Eagle had slumped into a council chair, pulling a flask from his jacket. "Wait, so this kid's been running around using my name, and he succeeded?" "Succeeded?" A council member stood up. "His tactics against the pirate fleet were unprecedented. 3 victories using methods that defied conventional logic." "And the trade agreement," another added. "The pirates actually agreed to legitimate commerce routes." "Not to mention," Aris said softly, "he managed to make diplomatic functions actually entertaining." The old Thunder Eagle took a long drink. "Huh. Well, in that case—" He raised his flask in Carl's direction. "Keep the name, kid. I'm too old for this stuff anyway. Just send me a pension and don't bother me with any actual work." Carl stared at him. "You're not angry?" "Angry?" Grant laughed, the sound like rocks in a garbage compactor. "Kid, you just got me out of having to marry the Emperor's granddaughter. No offense, beautiful, and guaranteed my retirement. I couldn't have planned it better myself." "Which brings us to the matter at hand," Valex said, his imperial tone cutting through the chamber. "Carl Knight, you stand accused of impersonating an imperial officer, infiltrating high-level diplomatic functions, and—" A smile crept across his face. "Completely revolutionizing our entire approach to military and diplomatic relations." Carl swallowed hard. "And my punishment?" "Punishment?" Valex laughed. "My boy, we're going to give you your own command." What?" "Well, we can hardly call you Thunder Eagle. That would be confusing. But how does Stormhawk sound? A new title for a new era of imperial tactics." Ara stepped closer to Carl, her hand finding his. "And what about our arrangement?" "Ah, yes, the marriage contract." Valex's clouded eyes twinkled. Well, since it was signed under false pretenses, we could legally nullify it. Carl felt Aris's hand tighten on his. But, the Emperor continued, given the circumstances, perhaps we should let the involved parties decide. Aris turned to Carl, those incredible violet eyes searching his face. Well, Commander Stormhawk? Care to negotiate one more treaty? Carl looked at her, really looked at her. The perfect posture that somehow managed to be alluring, the intelligence sparking in those eyes, the slight smile that suggested she was already 3 moves ahead of everyone else. When did you know, he asked softly. About me? The first day, she admitted. The real Thunder Eagle visited once when I was a child. He spent the entire time talking about himself and drinking our rarest spirits. But you, her smile widened. You actually looked at me, saw me, not just the Emperor's granddaughter, but me. To be fair, you're pretty hard to miss. Her laugh was like crystal chimes. And that irreverent charm, the real Thunder Eagle never had a sense of humor. She stepped closer. So yes, I knew. And I watched you turn every disaster into an opportunity, every challenge into a victory. And somewhere between your ridiculous video game tactics and that kiss in the conservatory, you fell for a con man. I fell for you. She tilted her head. The question is, was any of it real for you? Carl looked around the chamber. At the amused Emperor, the snoring Thunder Eagle, the council members waiting with barely concealed interest. Finally, his eyes returned to Aris. You know what the biggest con was? He said softly. Trying to convince myself I wasn't falling in love with you. A collective awe echoed through the chamber, quickly silenced by Aris's military glare. But her eyes were soft when she turned back to Carl. In that case, she said, I believe we have a wedding to plan. The imperial wedding was everything you'd expect from an advanced civilization celebrating its princess marrying a former con man turned military innovator. Crystal ships performed synchronized flight patterns in space, creating spectacular light shows. Anti-gravity platforms carried guests from 100 worlds. Even the real Thunder Eagle sobered up enough to give a surprisingly touching speech before passing out in the ceremonial punch bowl. Aris was a vision in her military-inspired wedding dress, the crystalline fabric shifting colors with her movements. Carl had been given a new uniform, specially designed with his rank of Stormhawk, all sleek lines and subtle power, but with just a hint of the roguish style he preferred. Ready to make this official? She whispered as they stood before the Emperor. As long as you promise not to spring any more surprise contracts on me. Oh, please, she smirked, as if you could handle another one of my surprises. Emperor Valex performed the ceremony himself, his clouded eyes twinkling with mischief. By the power vested in me by the imperial throne, and by the most entertaining case of mistaken identity in recent history, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The reception that followed would be talked about for years. Carl introduced several traditional earth dances that were absolutely made up on the spot. Aris somehow managed to make even the most ridiculous moves look elegant. The real Thunder Eagle taught the kitchen staff drinking songs that made even seasoned space pirates blush. Later, much later, Carl and Aris stood on the bridge of their new command ship, a sleek, crystal vessel that combined Tyranium elegance with some of Carl's more unconventional modifications. So, Aris said, studying the star charts, shall we set course for the diplomatic summit on Centauri Prime? Carl pretended to consider it. You know, I heard there's a fascinating anomaly in the Gilded Sector, probably worth investigating. The Gilded Sector? She raised an elegant eyebrow. You wouldn't be trying to accidentally discover any valuable trading routes, would you? Me? Never. He grinned. Though if we happen to stumble upon some profitable opportunities while performing our diplomatic duties, you're impossible." But she was smiling as she input the coordinates. "That's why you married me." "No," she said softly. "I married you because you're the first person who made me realize that sometimes the best strategy is no strategy at all." As their ship jumped to hyperspace, the crystal drive created a unique pattern in their wake. A swirling trail of stardust that, viewed from a distance, formed a perfect heart. "Computer," Carl said, watching the stars streak by, "calculate the odds of a con man finding true love while impersonating a legendary commander." "Processing," the AI replied. "Conclusion: some things defy mathematical probability. Also, Commander Stormhawk, your wife is rolling her eyes at you." "Some things never change," Eris said, but her hand found his as they soared into their next adventure. 10 years later. The legend of Stormhawk had spread across the galaxy. Children played with holovid figures of Carl Knight, pretending to execute his famous Earth vintage gaming maneuvers. Military academies had entire courses dedicated to studying his unconventional tactics, and somewhere in the diplomatic archives there was still that first trade agreement he'd won with a rigged card game. Carl stood at the viewport of his flagship, now crystalline sleek but with just enough questionable modifications to keep engineers awake at night. Behind him, chaos reigned, the organized kind that came with having 7 purple-skinned children with varying degrees of their father's mischief and their mother's tactical genius. "Dad! Nova took my tactical simulator again," young Alexander shouted, chasing his sister around the bridge. "Did not. I requisitioned it through proper channels." Nova, their eldest, had her mother's perfect posture even while dodging her brother. "Both of you maintain bridge protocol." Aris's voice cut through the commotion with practiced ease. After 10 years, she was still breathtaking. Her purple skin seemed to glow even more radiantly, her figure just as perfect, though now she wore the highest ranks of Imperial command with effortless grace. The twins, Stella and Luna, were reprogramming a maintenance bot to serve ice cream. Little Orion was explaining to anyone who would listen how he'd improved the ship's targeting systems. He actually had, at age 6. Vega was attempting to negotiate trading rights with her stuffed animals, while baby Phoenix gurgled happily in a floating crystal bassinet, already showing signs of both parents' charm. "Thinking deep thoughts, my love?" Aris slipped her arms around Carl's waist, still moving with that deadly grace that had first caught his attention. "Just appreciating how a failed con turned into all this." He gestured at their elegant bridge, their beautiful children, the fleet of ships visible through the viewport. "The greatest scam I ever pulled was convincing the galaxy I could actually be someone important." "Oh, please," she laughed, the sound still like crystal chimes after all these years. "The only person you were conning was yourself. You always were someone important. You just needed the right situation to prove it." "And the right partner," he added, pulling her closer. "Mom, Dad, Uncle Grant is on the comm." The real Thunder Eagle had become their children's favorite uncle, showing up at holidays to teach them questionable songs and tell increasingly exaggerated stories about how he'd planned the whole thing. The massive holo screen showed the old warrior, somehow even more disheveled than a decade ago. "Stormhawk, your reputation grows faster than your family, and that's saying something." He laughed. "Just heard about that maneuver you pulled in the Crimson Nebula. Using your children's video game strategies again?" "Best tactical training in the galaxy." Carl winked at Nova, who was already taking notes. "The Emperor wants you both home for the anniversary celebration," Grant continued. 10 years since the greatest case of mistaken identity turned into the Empire's most successful military innovation. After the call ended, Carl watched his family, Aris directing their organized chaos with military precision, the children plotting what appeared to be a full tactical assault on the kitchen's dessert supplies. On his wrist, the computer chimed. Calculating odds of your current happiness level versus probability matrices from 10 years ago, the AI announced smugly. Don't bother, Carl said, pulling Aris into a kiss that still felt like their first one in that crystal garden. Some things can't be calculated. Speaking of calculations, Aris murmured against his lips, have you considered that 7 might not be our final number? Carl's laugh echoed across the bridge. Stormhawk Junior Squadron could always use another member. As their ship cruised through space, its crystal wake still forming those mysterious heart patterns, Carl had never admitted to programming that feature, the legend continued to grow. But the greatest story wasn't in the military texts or diplomatic records. It was right here on this bridge, where a con man and a princess had built something real out of a fake identity and a mistaken contract. And somewhere in the Imperial archives, there was still that original marriage certificate, marked with a note in Emperor Valex's own hand. Sometimes the best strategy is letting love con us all. The end. Dear fellow travelers through this crystalline tale, sometimes the greatest stories in the universe start with a simple mistake, or perhaps, as Carl would say, with an opportunity in disguise. As I chronicled this peculiar intersection of love, deception, and intergalactic diplomacy, I found myself wondering if somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space, similar tales are unfolding right now. After all, isn't every great love story a bit of a con? We present our best selves, hoping to steal someone's heart, only to find our own has been expertly pickpocketed in return. And perhaps, like Carl and Aris, we discover that our finest moments come not from maintaining a perfect facade, but from letting someone see through it entirely, and loving us anyway. So the next time you look up at the stars, remember, somewhere out there, a roguish commander and his purple-skinned princess are probably getting lost in a suspiciously wealthy sector of space, their crystal ship leaving heart-shaped trails in the cosmic dust. And if you look carefully, you might just catch their children testing new vintage Earth gaming tactics against unsuspecting space pirates. May your own journey be just as entertainingly unpredictable, coordinates set, hyperdrive engaged. With stellar regards, the author.